You want a what? Garrick barked, barely looking up from his monitor. I stood there, my folder still in my hand, heart beating like I'd just sprinted across the office. A 10% raise. I've been here 12 years. I brought documentation. Garrick leaned back in his leather chair, kicked his feet up on the desk, and let out this loud, wheezing laugh, like I'd just told him I wanted to fly the company jet. That's cute, he said. You brought a folder. It wasn't just a folder. It was 3 months of tracking the tech upgrades, automation protocols, and back-end systems I'd personally built or improved. All of them had saved the company millions. Literally, millions. I opened it anyway, flipped it to the first page, and pointed. This is the system we launched in January. It cut payroll errors by... I know what it did, Garrick said, waving his hand. But you didn't do that alone. No, but I designed it, built it, deployed it. He squinted at me like I was a fly on the wall that somehow learned to speak. Look, you're good at what you do, but you're replaceable, he said. You're not on the board's radar. Honestly, I don't think they even know your name. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My mouth went dry. I didn't even sit down. Just stood there, listening to him dismantle 12 years of sweat and weekends like it meant nothing. I could hear my pulse in my ears. My hands were shaking, barely, but enough that I noticed. You really think I'm replaceable? Everybody is, especially people who ask for raises without leverage. I closed the folder slowly, not saying a word. I'd spent over a decade thinking loyalty would earn me something. I'd missed birthdays, worked holidays, trained new hires who got promoted before me. I was the ghost in the system, keeping everything running while someone else got the credit. I've put everything I've got into this place, I said. He shrugged. And it's appreciated. But a raise? It's not happening. Not now. That was it. That was the moment something cracked inside me. I didn't yell, didn't argue. I just nodded, turned, and walked out of his office with the folder still clutched in my hand like a stupid badge of honor nobody cared about. As the door clicked shut behind me, I knew one thing for sure. I was done being afraid, and I was done being ignored. I walked straight back to my cubicle without looking at anyone. Not that there was anyone left to look at. Half the department had been let go 6 months ago. People I'd trained, worked with, laughed with, all replaced by the automation I built. Now, their empty desks sat like graves around me, monitors dark, chairs pushed in too neatly. My screen was still on. I sat down, hands trembling just slightly, and stared at the company newsletter in my inbox. The subject line read, CEO Spotlight, Driving Innovation at Porter. I clicked it, already knowing. There he was, Garrick's smug face at the top, arms crossed, blazer too tight over his gut. The article praised his visionary leadership for spearheading the automation initiative that saved Porter over $8 million in overhead. It listed every system I built, line by line, like he'd written the damn code himself. The final insult. He took everything and put his name on it. I leaned back and looked at the small photo pinned next to my monitor. My dad, standing in front of the steel mill in Gary, Indiana, back when it was still running. Dirty jumpsuit, proud smile. He believed loyalty mattered. Show up. Work hard. They'll take care of you. I used to believe that too. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out my notebook. Thick, black cover. Beat up at the edges. Inside were sketches, flowcharts, notes, 2 years of personal systems I built on nights and weekends. Stuff that never hit the servers. Stuff that could have revolutionized our back end if anyone had bothered to ask. And it hit me. None of it was owned by Porter. Nothing I built had ever gone through formal IP acquisition. Garrick had never even bothered to protect the assets. He just used whatever I built, slapped his name on it, and moved on. He assumed I'd never walk, that I'd just keep taking it. I opened my phone, scrolled past the useless emails, found the old message from Hayden. If you ever decide you're done being the best-kept secret at Porter, let's talk. That was 3 months ago. I never answered, but now I tapped call before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on the second ring. "Didn't expect to hear from you." "I've got time for dinner tonight," I said. "You still interested?" "I'll make a reservation," he said, without missing a beat. 7. Del Mar Grill. I hung up, no hesitation. I closed the notebook and slid it into my bag. Then I opened my browser and pulled up the employee handbook. Searched for intellectual property, just to be sure. Nothing. No claims to work done off the clock. No binding agreements covering side projects. No NDAs with real teeth. Just basic HR boilerplate. It was reckless. Arrogant. Garrick never thought anyone in the trenches would have leverage. That someone like me would ever be smart enough or angry enough to use it. I glanced back at my dad's photo one last time. Sorry, Dad. Loyalty doesn't mean what it used to. I shut off my monitor and stood up. It was only 4:15, but I didn't care. The silence in that office was suffocating. I walked past the ghost desks, past the fake plants and burned-out hallway lights, and out into the September air without saying a word to anyone. Dinner was in less than 3 hours, and for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I walked into Del Mar Grill right at 7. Hayden was already there, corner booth, sleeves rolled, drink in hand like he'd been waiting for this since the day I ignored his text. He stood up as I approached. "You look like someone who's finally had enough." I didn't smile. "You don't know the half of it." He slid a whiskey across the table. "Let's fix that." The place was quiet, mostly suited executives trying to impress clients. Our table was far enough from anyone who'd recognize me. "So," Hayden said, "you called. You said you'd been watching what I did at Porter." He nodded. "For years. Since you launched that onboarding automation back in 2018. Everyone thought Garrick hired some outside firm for it. I knew better." I raised an eyebrow. "You've been tracking my work." "I know who builds what," he said. "You were behind the payroll restructure, the inventory workflows, even that predictive scheduling engine they tried to patent last year. All of it had your style." I reached down and pulled out my notebook, slid it across the table. "You were right." Hayden opened it like he already knew what was inside. As he flipped pages, his whole posture shifted, elbows on the table, focused, nodding slowly. "This is gold," he said. "And it's clean? No IP agreements with Porter?" I shook my head. "Nothing signed. Everything in that book was done off the clock, on my own gear, good. Because at Radius we handle that the right way. Formal acquisition, credit where it's due. You'd keep authorship on every line of code unless we negotiate otherwise. That hit me harder than I expected. Just being told I'd own my own work, it felt like breathing air after being underwater too long. "Let me be blunt," he said. "We want you. Director of Systems Strategy. Triple your current salary, full stock option plan. You build what you want, and we back you." I leaned back. "Just like that?" Hayden smiled. "I've been waiting 3 years for you to make that call." He kept flipping through the notebook, pausing on a page of flow diagrams I sketched during a sleepless night 6 months ago. "This one," he tapped, "could replace 3 of our current tools. I built that after they laid off Dave and Sharon. No one asked me to." He looked up. "Exactly why I want you." We reward that kind of instinct. We talked logistics, what the rollout would look like, how long it'd take to build a team, how we'd shift client infrastructure without tipping off Porter. I gave him my rough roadmap, 4 phases, starting with the legacy system replica and scaling up with smart integration. Hayden grinned. "You've already thought this through? 12 years of being ignored gives you time to plan." He lifted his glass. "To being underestimated." We didn't toast, we drank. By the time I left that booth, I wasn't the guy begging for a raise anymore. I had leverage, a notebook full of proof, and someone finally willing to put my name on the work. I stepped out into the night, no hesitation in my step, and called my ride. Tomorrow, everything changed. I walked into Garrick's office the next morning before he even finished his coffee. Dropped the envelope right on his desk. This is my 2 weeks. He stared at it like it was radioactive. You serious? Completely. He opened it, scanned the letter, then leaned back like he had all the power in the world. All right, let's not be hasty. What do you want? 5%? Title change? Project lead on the next rollout? I didn't sit. Radius offered me triple, director role, full control. They put my name on what I build. That wiped the smirk off his face for a second. Then it was back, force this time. Triple, he repeated. That's desperation pay. They'll bleed you dry in 6 months. You're not built for the politics at that level. I crossed my arms. I built half your infrastructure with no team and no credit. I'll be fine. You think they're going to treat you different? They'll chew you up faster than we ever did. I smiled, calm, confident. We'll see. He didn't say another word, just looked back down at his screen like I wasn't there. The next 2 weeks moved in slow motion. I trained the guy replacing me, some eager contractor who kept asking how I built things so elegantly. I answered every question, archived everything. Clean handoff, no drama, people noticed. A few coworkers cornered me in the break room. Some looked jealous. Some looked scared, but nobody said congratulations. On my last day, HR scheduled my exit interview. Standard stuff, benefits, COBRA, all the useless crap no one reads. Then legal showed up, 2 suits I didn't recognize. I didn't touch it. That's not in my contract. This is just a formality. Prevents disclosure of sensitive systems. Systems I built? I opened my bag and slid out a different folder, my own this time. They flipped through the pages, same way Hayden had. Notes, timestamps, sketches, even the commits from my home network. All dated, all mine. This is your documentation, personal IP, built off-site, on my own time, with my own equipment. You'll notice none of it went through legal. The taller one started flipping back through the handbook. His brow tightened. The other just sat there blinking. They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. They just sat there, silent, realizing how badly they'd screwed up. I stood up, folder still in hand. You want to push this? You'll lose. They didn't say a word. I walked out without looking back. 2 weeks after my last day at Porter, my systems went live at Radius. Day 1, internal costs dropped 9%. Day 3, client support response time cut in half. Day 5, Eastwood noticed. They were Porter's biggest client. Multi-year contract, global logistics, high maintenance as hell. But they didn't like slow answers or broken systems. And Radius didn't have either. By week 2, Eastwood jumped ship. That was the beginning of the landslide. We didn't announce anything, didn't blast it all over LinkedIn. We just delivered results, one client at a time. Over the next several months, the shift picked up speed. Lawsuits, client moves, and the slow collapse of Porter, all unfolding piece by piece. Every meeting I walked into, people already knew my name. At Radius, I wasn't hiding in the basement. I was leading teams. The call started after Eastwood left. First, just 1 or 2 from a block number. Then 3 in a row. I didn't pick up. The 4th time, he left a voicemail. Garrick. His voice sounded tight, forced, casual. Hey, give me a call when you get a minute. Just wanna reconnect. I deleted it. The next day, I stayed late at Radius to finish syncing our automation with onboarding. Stepped into the parking garage a little after 8, and there he was, Garrick, leaning on the hood of a black SUV like some washed-out villain in a bad TV drama. I had a feeling I'd find you here, he said. I kept walking toward my car without looking at him. He stepped forward. Let's talk. We already did, I said, popping my trunk. Look, I get it. You were pissed. I misread the situation. But I think we can... No. You don't even know what I'm offering. I don't care. He dropped the fake charm. Porter's bleeding. You win, all right? You made your point. I shut the trunk hard. This isn't about winning. It's about respect, something you never gave me. He moved in closer, hands raised like I owed him something. All right, We'll recognize your IP, hell. We'll license it if that's what it takes. Just help us stabilize. I'm asking you, man, a man. I met his eyes. Everyone's replaceable, even me. He flinched just slightly, enough for me to see the cracks. I got in the car and pulled out without another word. By the end of that quarter, Porter's stock took a hit so hard it made headlines. Down 31% in 6 weeks. Analysts called it strategic failure. Employees called it what it was, a collapse. I watched from my office at Radius as the layoff reports started hitting the news feeds. Whole departments gutted, people I'd known for years, some I liked, some who never bothered to learn my name. But the tide had turned, and this time, I wasn't the one drowning. The lawsuit landed on my desk like a bad joke. Porter was suing me for IP theft. They accused me of stealing proprietary systems, claimed I took confidential trade secrets, tried to frame it like I'd gutted the company from the inside. Radius's legal team laughed through half the meeting. I'd dropped the same documentation I'd shown Porter's legal weeks earlier. Timestamps, device IDs, build logs from my personal servers. Hayden's team added a digital forensics report on top. The judge didn't even let it get to discovery. Case dismissed. A week later, Garrick showed up at my office without an appointment. My assistant gave me a warning look through the glass. I waved him in. He looked wrecked. Tie gone, shirt wrinkled, circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't even sit. Just stood there in front of my desk like he couldn't believe where he was. "You destroyed everything," he said. I didn't move. "I asked for a 10% raise. That's all. You could have come to me again. You could have... You laughed in my face, Garrick." He pointed a shaky finger. We were already hurting. "You just sped it up." "No," I said. "I just stopped cleaning up your mess for free." He looked around my office like the walls had betrayed him. "You didn't have to make it personal." It was never personal. It was survival. He opened his mouth to say something else, then didn't. Just turned and walked out without another word. I stared at the door for a second, then opened a new spreadsheet, started listing names: Marlene, Doug, Keisha, Eric from infrastructure. Some of them I hadn't talked to in years, some I hadn't even liked, but they didn't deserve to be collateral damage. 2 days later, Marlene showed up in our lobby. No call, no email. Just walked in, holding her cardboard HR box. I met her in the break room. "You really made it out," she said. "Like, all the way out." "You too," I said. "You're here." She looked down. "They dumped my whole team last Friday. 28 people gone. Half of them had kids." Then she looked up, eyes hard. "Was it worth it?" I didn't blink. "Every second." She nodded once, slow, and then "Let's make it count." I added her to the spreadsheet that afternoon, gave her a temporary contractor badge the same day. Next morning, I pitched the list to Hayden, formal rehire program. Radius would absorb displaced Porter staff, on our terms. New contracts, clear roles, real credit. He skimmed the list, then handed it back. "Let's do it." I got to work. First call went to Keisha. She picked up on the second ring. We launched Operation Rebound the next week. Hayden approved a dedicated hiring stream just for ex-Porter staff. Referrals only, background checked, role matched. I ran point with HR and built out the intake system myself. The first 10 hires came fast, quiet ones. The ones who used to work through lunch and stay late without asking why. Good people who never got their shot under Garrick. Now, they finally did. Marlene didn't waste a second. She started as a consultant on client onboarding, but didn't stay there long. 3 months later, she was running customer experience. She earned it. Clients loved her. She had grit, clear vision, and she remembered names, something Garrick never managed once. But not everyone came back smiling. Some ignored my messages entirely. A few wrote back with real venom, blaming me for the layoffs, for Porter's collapse, even for their own promotions that never came. One email ended with, "You could have warned us." I saved every one of those replies in a folder labeled Consequences. not out of spite, but as a reminder of what silence costs, of who chooses pride over opportunity. Then came Vance. He showed up unannounced, walking into my office like he still worked for Porter's Legal. Same pressed shirt, same sharp look. But there was something different in his face, less polish, more edge. "I've got something you need to see," he said. He handed me a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop while he stood behind me, arms crossed. The folder was full of internal emails, legal threads between me and Porter's execs from 3 years ago. I'd offered formal IP assignments back then, requested review, even asked if I should root through legal. Everything was time-stamped, clean, direct, and ignored. Vance pointed to one chain in particular. This one went to Garrick directly. He ignored it, never even forwarded it to legal. I looked up at him. So he knew. "All of it," Vance said. "He gambled you'd never ask for more. Bet the company on your silence." I closed the laptop slowly, my jaw clenched, but I didn't say a word. Vance sat across from me. I hated working for him. Always did. But I figured, if you're still building something better, maybe I can finally do something right. I nodded once. "You want in?" He didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I do." I added his name to the spreadsheet. He started Monday. 3 days after Vance started, Garrick called again. This time, I picked up. His voice was flat, dull. "We're filing." I didn't say anything. "Porter's entering Chapter 11 by end of quarter. I thought you should hear it from me." I waited. "We've got good people left," he said. "Ones that didn't bail. People with families. I know Radius is scaling. Maybe you'd consider bringing them in." I heard it. That thing he never once showed me when I worked for him. Pride swallowed. I kept my voice steady. "Send over the list." He hung up without saying thank you. By the following week, we had a team reviewing the final wave of resumes. HR set up a dedicated portal. We brought on a second recruiter just for referrals. 1 month later, we'd hired 173 former Porter employees. The old office was a graveyard. Lights out, shredders empty, cafeteria gutted. But our floors were full, cubicles buzzing, whiteboards crowded, energy finally moving in the right direction. Clients followed the people, not the logo. By quarter 2, Radius had absorbed 23% of Porter's old market share. Every time a legacy account shifted over, someone sent me the client contact with one word: transferred. Marlene ran her division like she'd been born for it. Jason rebuilt the analytics team. Vance rewrote our internal policy to bulletproof our IP terms. Nobody asked for permission anymore. They just built. I kept my head down, worked quietly, stayed out of the spotlight, until I couldn't. The awards committee reached out, said my name had come up in multiple nominations for the National Systems Innovation Award, said I'd become the face of the transition, Porter's collapse, Radius's rise, and the new industry standard we set. I didn't want the attention, but I wasn't going to hide from it either. The night of the ceremony, I stood behind a podium in a gray suit that actually fit, holding a plaque I never thought I'd care about. Flashes clicked, people clapped, reporters shouted for quotes I wasn't giving. But none of that mattered, because standing at that podium, I wasn't just some ghost in the background anymore. I was the blueprint. After the ceremony, a line formed near the stage. Most people just wanted a handshake or a photo. I kept it short, polite. I didn't care much for applause. Then a young developer stepped forward, early 20s, glasses, clutching a notepad like it was armor. She didn't ask for a photo, just looked me dead in the eye and said, "How did you know when to stand up for yourself?" I didn't think, I just told her the truth. Don't wait 12 years like I did. She nodded slow, like she already had. I gave her my card and told her to reach out directly. Next morning, I sent an all-staff email announcing a new mentorship program. We called it Blueprint. Simple. Real. The first workshop drew over 300 attendees. We booked a second one the same day. People didn't just show up from Radius, They came from startups, remote contractors, even 2X Porter devs I hadn't seen in years. We didn't talk about theory or soft skills. We talked about leverage, pay gaps, burnout. We talked about building the future without breaking ourselves. That same week, a package landed on my desk. No return address. Inside was a black frame, clean and heavy. Behind the glass was a printout of a Wall Street Journal article. Porter's Collapse, a cautionary tale of leadership failure. At the bottom was a handwritten note in neat cursive. You were never replaceable. Gee, I stared at it for a while. It wasn't an apology. It was admission. Regret in 5 words. I hung it on my office wall, not out of spite, not to gloat, to remember that I'd define my worth. No one else. Under Hayden's lead, Radius leaned into the shift. We rewrote our hiring model to prioritize builders, not titles. Dropped pedigree requirements. Scaled mentorship. Backed innovation with ownership clauses in every contract. It wasn't just a culture shift. It was a damn signal fire. People followed. Other firms took notice. Some called it risky. Others called it radical. I called it overdue. We weren't just poaching Porter's old clients. We were resetting the rules. And this time, I wasn't in the shadows. I was leading it. I sat in my corner office, sunlight hitting the far wall just right. Clean desk. Glass board behind me. 40 people on my team. 6 patents with my name on them, framed on the shelf. But I wasn't expensive. I was invaluable. They just didn't see it until it was too late. I didn't get loud, didn't throw a fit or torch the place on the way out. I walked out calm, folder in hand, plan in motion. That was the difference. Revenge didn't come with fire. It came with recognition. Now I sat where the decisions were made. My team didn't ask for permission to innovate. They were encouraged to. We tracked progress, sure, but we didn't grind people into dust to prove a point. Radius didn't just absorb market share. We redefined what leadership looked like in this industry. We didn't chase titles. We chased results and the people who made them possible. Meanwhile, the company that laughed me off the map collapsed under its own arrogance. I didn't burn bridges. I outgrew them. I didn't have to tear Porter down. They did it to themselves the second they decided loyalty was cheaper than respect. What I built here wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was real. We valued people, not just output. And that alone made us unstoppable. One of my engineers left a sticky note on my door last week. It said, "You make us want to stay." That meant more than any plaque. So if you're sitting somewhere right now, undervalued and unseen, thinking maybe you're asking for too much, you're not. Start documenting today. Every project, every idea, every win that got swept under someone else's name. Because the most powerful kind of revenge isn't about burning it all down. It's building something better and making damn sure your name is on it.